Family, friends, we have a very special guest today, Mr. Gregory Romney. Greg's a lovable guy. He owned and started Romney Pest Control, which he sold out of somewhat recently. We get the opportunity to deep dive into what it was his career there, even before, and touching a little bit after. He's been a great just leader to me. He's taught me a lot in business as well as personal life, what it takes to be a successful person. Greg's also mentored several people in door-to-door and beyond. So we feel lucky to have him today, and let's get the podcast going with Mr. Gregory Romney. Members of Bird Nation, we feel very lucky to have a legend to many of the people that have worked here and across the pest space. We have Greg Romney. Greg's my uncle. He's a dear friend. He's coached and led many people through several summers. He had over a 20-year span of owning his own business, Romney Pest Control. On top of that, a rich history of selling door-to-door for other companies. And marketing deal experience, also just as a rep. Greg's also a savant when it comes to investing and learning and personal growth. We're happy to have you on. So
glad to be here. It's fun.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for coming on. We've actually wanted to do this one for a long time. Every podcast that comes out, I feel like there's like 8 people that are like, dude, why haven't you got Greg on yet? I'm like, dude, he's blown me off. Dude.
You said that multiple times, but I'm kind of offended because the invite didn't come for years. You know?
No, dude. I'm glad we're making it happen.
He ran out of good people.
Yeah, no, dude, whatever. So just kind of hopping into it, I want to go all the way back to junior high gym. So you remember when you like running the mile when people are kind of go out and there's always that one kid in the class that like darts out like at the first like 20 meters or whatever, and then all of a sudden as the mile goes, people slide to the back. They start sliding to the back. One of the things I think you're really gifted at, or really good at, or we could all learn from in owning your own business, in sales and leadership and all those things, is I think you're really good at pacing yourself well to run the whole mile, and just you're a good example of endurance and stuff like that. And I think for first year guys that go out and sell in the summer to managers and stuff like that, I think a lot of times people do have that initial burst of energy where they run out the gate really hot, but then things kind of like filter back. But I mean, with your tenure, your career in door to door, what are some things you found to help you stay present when it's after the first 20 meters, when it's into the whole mile? How are you able to do that as a sales rep, as an owner, and as a manager?
I mean, I think I actually have a very impulsive side, so I think that I do have a tendency to kind of jump out there and start sprinting, but then you realize real quick that you get tired real quick, and so you kind of have to like slow it down from there and pace yourself. And as far as being present is concerned, like I've always kind of had an interest in people, and so I really kind of like figuring out why they think the way they think, and so that's always kind of just been a natural thing for me, that I enjoy it. But I also I just kind of enjoy a challenge, and so I feel like in the door-to-door space, that's very much what it is, and I've always just kind of embraced that, and you see other people succeeding at it, and that kind of is a challenge in and of itself, in the fact that I'm like, hey, if they can do this, I can do this. And so it always kind of drove me a little bit further to want to see if I could create the same results they were seeing.
That's cool. So, I mean, as I kind of jumped into it quick, but I want to back up and talk a little bit about your origin story. Kind of
back to middle school gym.
Yeah, exactly. So walk us forward through them, and kind of just tell, well, what got you into the space? What were some big transition moments for you? And yeah, just kind of bring us forward.
So I grew up in California, and a lot of companies were bringing guys out from, BYU and things like that to come work during the summers there. And so I saw the guys coming out, making money, doing well, dating a lot of girls. And so I was like, hey, this seems like it's for me, you know. And so I got home from my mission, and my cousin actually at the time was coming to Sacramento, California, and I was from about an hour away from there. And so I just hopped on board with him to head to the office that he was heading to and go sell there. Mike Romney.
Mike Romney.
But a different Mike Romney than most people know.
Who's the one that most people know?
And there's a Mike Romney in the space that, like, everyone in pest control seems like, oh, yeah, Mike Romney, wow. But this was a different Mike Romney who's not still in pest control. Okay. So, yeah. But, we went out and sold and just kind of made it a successful summer while we were out there. And one thing led to another, and then it was 2 summers, and then 3 and 4 and 20, you know.
In those early days, and I've never asked you this before, but was there someone that you saw as like a really big leader or that taught you a ton or took you to another level, and kind of what attributes did they have?
So in the beginning, actually, what was really good, I worked, my team leader in the early days was good, but it wasn't that he was necessarily so skilled. Actually, the most skilled guy in our office was a timeshare presentation guy that would come out for the summers, and he was like the least hard worker in the office, but he was so skilled that he could get away with it. And he said that in timeshares, when they'd go selling, they would take a marker and just put dots on their hands to every no. And when they got to 30, they knew that they were done presenting. And so they would just like keep putting the dots down. So he just had so many ways to turn things around positively and rebuttal things in a way that people didn't feel kind of attacked or that it was a conflict of a way to approach it. And so a lot of skills we were able to witness from him. But I was with also a BYU wrestling team, and the thing I've learned over the years is the 2 hardest workers in this industry are wrestlers and farmers. And those two demographics, yeah, they just work hard. And I was with, like, all the guys were from the wrestling team together, so it was a really close-knit team, and I just kind of worked my way in really easily, and they all were like pushing each other and grinding, and everyone wanted to kind of like do better than the other guy because they practiced every day together. And so I just jumped right in that scene, and the whole office, we all really did well. That's cool. And so because of that, like, all of us were able to continue on. In fact, I know there's 1 or 2 that are still in the space today as well, not just me.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of cool.
Huh. Dude, I'd never heard that. I never heard that story from you. I've been bugging you about stories for a long time. That's cool. And so the timeshare guy, like, he's like, I'm just going to take a break from timeshare for the summer. I feel like that would be the time to sell them, though, during the summer.
Well, people are vacationing year-round. But for him, he could come out for 4 months, make more money than he was making in timeshares, and then go back and do timeshares for the other 8 months and make great money doing that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but because he did timeshares 8 months a year, he would come out and just put in 7 hours and he was done.
Huh. Okay, and so that was with Clark Pest Control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And there's a lot of big names that work for Clark, or a lot of people that are still in the space. Like, they have a ton of people that like have gone on to start several different companies all throughout. Was that kind of like the big fish back then? Clark
was probably the big player back then, and what happened was Terminix at the time had a group just right before then. I think it was SalesNet or something, and they went belly up. And so because of that, like, Clark was kind of the trusted name that would pay you and you'd get your money, and so there wasn't as many independents out there. And now there's just a lot of, independents out there too, so they've become trusted as well. And in fact, even sometimes more trusted because they'll actually compensate you better than some of these, bigger companies will. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that was your kind of getting into it. When did you decide, hey, I think I can lead a team and like bring people out?
So going into year 2, I would have liked to have led a team at that point. I feel like the results from year 1, like I did well, so I feel like I should have been warranted to be leading a team year 2, but I got into a little altercation on the doors the year before, and had a few choice words for a prospective customer, so they didn't think that I was in a position to be heading a team up maybe quite yet, until all of a sudden they had a team lead drop out, and so then at that point was my time to shine.
Dude, I always love those moments when like you're working somewhere and then someone just dips out and they're like, "You are the new guy."
Like a battlefield promotion. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Time to go. So.
That's awesome. So, and did he dip out before the summer, midsummer, or?
So he dipped out before the summer, and then they came to me, and they knew I was kind of a little bit upset that I didn't get a position already. Like, I mean, I was top first year in the company, and so to not get a position was honestly a slight on me.
Yeah.
And so I was a little upset about that. So then I speak my mind pretty openly, and so I let them know. And so then when that came available, they gave me the spot, and then we went out and we did it again. You know, we tore it up. We did great. So it was a fun summer.
And you did 3 years as a manager?
So I did a year there with Clark, and then I broke off and I did my own marketing company, and I worked for a couple other companies from there, just kind of independently as my own marketing company. And that was back before there really was marketing companies like there is now, you know. So it was kind of a new concept, and we broke off and did that, and worked with these other companies, and that was okay. There was a few issues there because we didn't have full control of what we were doing as the marketing company. We were working through another marketing company for a pest control company, and they weren't fulfilling what we were being promised would be fulfilled, and so it was making us dishonest when we weren't attempting to be.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't really like that situation that we had no control over our outcomes.
Well, that's what's tough too. Is like, well, it's like a 7-layered promise. It's like you got to go through so and so to get to so and so to get to so and so to finally get some action done. So that can get sticky.
Yeah, it was interesting. So
That's cool.
it was good learning though, honestly, because that's when I realized I wanted to do this for myself because I didn't have control and I wanted that control, and secondly too, like just the integrity aspect of it is like they were turning me into a liar, and I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So.
Well, I imagine that had to be pretty scary too, because I mean, you probably brought out a ton of people like with you to go sell, and then like they're not fulfilling on the promise, and you want to keep good to them, and I mean, probably as your first year up, I mean, everyone knows there's parts where it's scary. As a team lead, there's parts where it's scary, and then owning your own business, there's definitely some moments of like, holy cow, I'm a little nervous. Like, hope I can get through this or make it out. So that fear does settle in sometimes, but over your career, is there any moments in particular when you're like, that was scary, but I got through it, and I learned this kind of through that journey, or anything like that? Any moments where it seemed really intense, and you're like, I didn't know if we could weather that storm, but we did?
I mean, so I guess starting as a sales rep in your first year, I mean, it's deer in the headlights. Like, so how do I get people to buy this or sign up or whatever? And then you kind of see it. And so you're like, oh, okay. And you kind of get some understanding of it. So then you go out and do it. And then from there, you're kind of going along. Every day is a little bit anxiety ridden till you get that first sale, you know? And then when you get into your second year, you're not as worried that you're not going to get a sale, but you're just trying to get that first one as quick as you can. And then you go through, and then it becomes like you're expected to be a leader. And so then it's kind of both anxiety ridden as far as like, hey, can we get everyone in the office producing? And also like they're looking to me like, if you have any slow moments, it's like I got to be producing right now because everyone's looking to me, you know? And then it becomes owning the business, and everyone's looking to you for the answers, and some situations and problems just don't have a good answer.
Yeah.
And also, like when I started, I was maybe 26, and so I mean, all of my employees were older than me, and so they kind of already doubt your knowledge and your wisdom and your understanding of things, and so you have to earn that respect. Like you can't demand respect, you earn it. And so there was situations where they're just kind of pushing you with things, trying to make sure that, trying to challenge you almost to see like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This young punk, what's he doing?
Well, and that can perk up no matter age too. Sometimes that can happen. I've had that happen in a lot of different like work atmospheres. And one thing that I've learned in business is you have to keep people's hearts knit together. in order to be successful. Because the minute everyone starts dividing, you're only as strong as you are united.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things when you can feel that, or when you had moments when, I can feel hearts leaning away from the company's vision or leaning away from what we need to do as a team? What are some practices or some things you implemented regularly to bring everyone back together and get going on the right track?
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind initially is the salesmen actually were a bit problematic in that respect because of the fact that they viewed themselves as above the technicians. And that happened year after year, that we would have to remind the salesman, number one, like, you're completely dependent on these guys showing up and doing a great job for you. So, you might want to get in line with the idea that you guys are united. But also, like, just because people have different skill sets, no one's above anybody else. And the compensation at times speaks otherwise. But, like, there's just an aspect of pride that comes into play when people think that they're more important than somebody else because they make more than them or anything else like that. And so it was just important always to remind these guys how dependent they were on the technicians. And honestly, the technicians would get upset from time to time here or there, but we actually had a pretty good culture with the technicians of, hey, the reason why we grow, the reason your opportunities grow in this company is because these sales guys and the annoyances that they bring to us. But at the same time, it also brings opportunity. And they actually had a good understanding of that. You did have to remind them of that, but it was really the salesmen in our business that we had to kind of continually stay on. Hey, don't talk that way about, like, so-and-so. That's, better than he is or whatever,
100%. I've even noticed in my own personal career, though, like, sometimes I think it's a natural human tendency to be like, so-and-so sucks. They don't do enough or stuff like that. But I've noticed my slowest moments of growth have been when I haven't been grateful for the people around me. And when I understand how important they are to me, that's been, when I've understood it better, that's been my fastest moments of growth. And so I see a lot of times those people, they feel like, you're not good enough, you're not doing X, Y, or Z. It just puts you in a really bad mindset to add value to everyone around you, which at the end of the day, the more value you add, very quickly your pay will come in line with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the truth, is like how replaceable you are in terms of what you provide or bring to the situation is how well you'll be compensated.
Yeah.
Almost 100%, 90-something% of the time, Once in a while there's someone that gets overlooked, but it's just a matter of time that happens too,
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say too is like, it also comes down to the culture that you set. So as a leader, everyone's looking at you, and when something goes wrong in the company, how do you respond to that? Like, do you respond, like getting your elbows into the dirt and saying, hey, we'll get this taken care of, not a problem, let's figure this out. Also, do you take accountability when you screw up? Or whenever something happens, do you berate somebody, tell them what an idiot they are? Anytime it happens on your watch, you tell them why it's someone else's fault. Because if you do those things, that's what trickles down to everybody else and how they should be reacting when those moments come. And so, like, I love when you see people willing to take responsibility, but I need to be willing to take responsibility too in order to promote and perpetuate that.
100%. Yeah, no, and I think one of the cool things that I always felt when I worked for you, I worked for you for 4 years, 5 years? Something like that. And, one thing, you always did a really good job of painting that to me, like how important it is to appreciate the people you're with. And then the other thing you taught me really, really well that I always liked was understanding a balance sheet. Sometimes when I would get flustered or things like that, you would or I'd be like, I could just do this or that. And I would only see one side of the balance sheet. You were really good at being like, hey, there's other expenses or problems that arise in a business. And over the time that I was with you, I feel like I learned a lot about like seeing the full side. You've always been really good at like seeing like a bigger scope of a balance sheet. And I'm wondering, where did you learn that? Was that something you learned in college, in a class? And how is that important to a sales rep? I think a lot of times some of our sales guys come out and they make a lot of money. But anyone won't get to the next level if they're not good at understanding and maintaining their own pocketbook or profit and loss.
Well, I mean, I've always been kind of more numbers focused, more on that side of the brain, kind of logic focused and things. And so, I did just took normal classes at school, accounting. I studied economics. So, I mean, there is, aspects of that involved in understanding economics. Sorry about that.
You're good.
But anyways, I think also we talk about, hey, when you're running the business, the fear that comes into it and things like that. The real fear that I would run into as a business owner was when there was uncertainty around, are we going to make it? Is this going to be an issue? And I think if you understand your numbers, it takes a lot of that uncertainty away. And so it was always helpful actually knowing the numbers, because a lot of business owners, what gets them into trouble is they're like, we're good, we're growing. Well, in pest control, if all you do is grow, you're going to grow yourself right out of business. And the issue becomes like having an understanding for how much are we losing per account that we're putting on, and sales reps never understand that you're actually losing money every account that you're putting on, because they're like, oh man, he's fine, he's rich, whatever. But really, it's a cash crunch situation up front, that you're losing money up front to pay them in order to recoup that money on the back end, and sometimes that's years down the road. But if you know what those numbers are exactly and how far out that profitability will be, then at least you can keep focused on the negative numbers that you're seeing along the way. And so it keeps the anxiety from flaring up and being an issue. And a lot of times when the stress is there because of those situations, that's when you're lashing out improperly at employees or situations in the office. And so, that stress isn't good for the entirety of the culture.
Yeah. Well, and I heard an acronym the other day about fear. It says fear is just false evidence appearing real. And kind of going back to your point of understanding your numbers, if you're really good at understanding what situation you're actually in, it helps you navigate what your action is. Because a lot of times I see people year after year on the recruiting side, they'll try to go out and create a team, but they almost feel like, I don't have anybody yet, I don't know what to do, and they almost the problem it exasperates itself because they don't figure out the definitive actions necessary to accomplish the goal. Mm-hmm. And so I think in whatever your goal is, if it's, hey, figuring out how to maintain a balance sheet, figuring out how to attain recruits, whatever you're going into, you need to understand really what it is, so then you can then navigate yourself out.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree with that.
So that's cool. So outside of obviously a big reason why people are in pest control is for the money. There's a huge upside that. But I think you were always really good too during your tenure of making sure you were teaching people. And so apart from just the balance sheet or making the money, what was one of the fun things along the way that you're like, oh, that was really rewarding, helping so-and-so grow? And how important is that to keep focused while you're growing your business?
Well, it's funny actually that you say this, because the joke that we've always had is that the one guy that I never got out and trained properly was you. That everyone else got my time on the doors besides you. And there is some truth in that, but he didn't need it. So, so I think there's just an aspect of fulfillment or something that just feels rewarding when you're helping people level up, and that also you can for myself, it's hard for me to recognize it in myself as well until I'm looking back and seeing where I've come from and being like, wow, I've come a long way too. And so both of those are really fulfilling for me. And so that's probably what kind of has kept my focus on being willing to stay engaged with that. The other thing though too is it kind of comes back to the same thing as the balance sheet, looking at the long-term goals is, in pest control, you can sell as much as you want to. I mean, you can be a golden door guy and all this stuff, and that's great. But if you want to be compensated the most you can be compensated in this business, it's not by being the best salesman in the world, it's by being the best recruiter. And in order to do that, your people need to know that you have their back and that you're true to them and that you'll take care of them, and when they know that, they'll be loyal to you as you've been loyal to them. And so I think that also kind of creates that environment as well, and that desire inside myself to want to do that is because there's also, like, the same reason that we're knocking doors is for the monetary reward. Well, that's the same reason also why you're making sure that you're taking care of people in the best way, is because there's a monetary reward behind that too. There's other rewards as well, like I mentioned, but if you fail to see the monetary reward, you'll end up being that guy that sells more than anybody else, but doesn't make as much as the people that make the most in this industry, because they don't see the real vision of what this is.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I'm learning as I'm continuing to grow in my business career is there's a huge payout in people and making sure they're happy, growing and learning. And there's few things other than like bringing people together, organizing them, helping them grow, that pays higher than I think doing that. I mean, I'm sure there's things, I don't know everything, but from what I've seen, that's a huge vehicle to take you to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, I kind of want to jump back in really quick. So day one of Romney Pest Control. So for those watching or kind of listening to the podcast, you built and then sold Romney Pest Control out a couple years ago. You built it for 20
years.
20 years.
Mm-hmm.
20 years. And I mean, what was day one? What did it look like?
So on day one, we had 10 sales reps come down, friends, family, and a couple of other kind of people that we knew through people. And we had a 2-bedroom apartment, and 10 of us living in the 2-bedroom apartment. The office was in the master bedroom as well. And we'd get up. Well, initially we were actually waiting on a license, and so we'd get up and play video games while waiting. And then a month or so after we had gotten there, then we finally had the license in hand that we could go out and really go after it. And then we just go out and get focused on getting sales and come back home at the end of the night. But it was really basic. We had 1 truck, then 2 trucks. We had just like, a hodgepodge of people and all living together. And then we kind of created an opportunity for a secondary apartment and stuff. But people were leaving because it wasn't the greatest scenario for them. We were more desperate at that time, so we grabbed kind of whoever, even knowing they might not be the best fit for our situation. And so, it wasn't some great culture that we had created or anything. It was honestly a lot of problems and figuring out how to resolve all of those problems. And the other problem on top of that was money. I mean, it's a cash flow situation too, because everyone's getting paid. And so we actually paid as we went for our guys, just so that we could afford it, Yeah. And then in time, we grew and got better and better, and, more trucks and office.
Well, and I think it's really good for like someone starting out. I think a lot of times when people show up at like a workspace or stuff, they see all the people working there, they see the building, the trucks, everything, and they're like, oh, dude, like this person has always like that came in that how lucky that affluence came into their life. But like, I think it's encouraging to know, for people to hear, like, hey, no, most people starting out, it's like, you're not in the Taj Mahal, dude. You're in the Motel 6, dude. Like you're here, and I think realizing that you need to learn how to like keep order there,
mm-hmm.
to then grow into that is big, and everyone goes through that continues to grow and does something special.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also think about, they talk about, burn your boats, and like at the time, I mean, we really had burned all our boats because we signed a lease to live in Texas. If we didn't get this thing up and operating, I had no reason to be in Texas. We were down there with all of our family involved. So, I mean, you had a lot of people that were trusting you that it was going to work well and it was going to work out for them. And so, I mean, there was a lot of pressure on us to make it work. And I didn't have any problem with that because I was 100% willing to do whatever it took to make it work. But that's kind of when you kind of put your toe in the water, it's not going to work because you're not fully committed to it. But when you're 100% committed to it, even when it doesn't work, you'll figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah. And I like that for someone even going out and selling in the summer. Like, there are those people that have a half commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just actually talked with on our last podcast with Kate. We talked about how some people they're very committed for the like first 2 or 3 weeks and stuff like that, but then they disengage their heart, and all of a sudden you'll see that kind of carrying throughout the entire summer, and they're there physically, but heart and mind are just so far gone that nothing's continuing to grow. So I just think that's so important to just keep everything there and committed in order for you to keep growing it and going to the next level.
But if you want to be successful in this business, it's no different than if you want to be successful in anything else in life. It's like my son right now is playing football, and he's not getting as many plays as he wants. And I tell him, if you want to get plays, you can. You just have to be willing to do more right now than anyone else out there's doing. So when you come home, you got to be willing to put in more work when practice is over, or before practice, you got to go be willing to put in more work. And it's a universal principle. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, and pest control is all the same. But you see people kind of get disheartened because it's a difficult. Man, there's a hard job. Yeah, it's a hard job, but football practice is hard too. Well, man, I'm tired. I just got done with football practice. Right, and everyone else is too. But if you want to put in more work to see the results, you got to go do it when it's hard,
Yes. And one thing that I think goes with that too, a lot of times indoor to door, I think people, when we go into every new arena in life, when you get in that new arena, you know the way to work hard, like up to that point. And a lot of times we lean on, oh, well, this is working hard in the past camp. When you get in the new camp, you have to find new and creative ways to up-level yourself and take you. Working hard changes and it increases over time. So finding those when you're recruiting, when you're selling, what are the new things that I need to implement that is working? You can't just work hard and then not elevate your mind. You have to juggle both.
And even embrace it too. Like if you're trying to find ways to avoid work your whole life or whatever, I mean, you might find ways to do it, but the most successful people I know are people that don't only like grit through work, but they embrace it and actually find ways to enjoy it.
Yeah.
That the challenge is a pleasure to them.
Yeah, happiness advantage. And those people are so much more fun to work with too. Yeah, it nothing's worse when you're like co-piloting something with someone that wants to like take the shift. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, so talk to me about the middle. I mean, people always focus on the beginning and the end of the journey. But I mean, let's say in the middle, were there ever some hiccups or some scares of like, or some things that you're like, man, like, this was just a huge lesson I learned like in owning my business?
So in the beginning, I mean, the middle kind of, it goes back to the beginning a little bit. The first 3 years of my business, I wanted to sell out every single year because I was like, this is terrible. Like there's a lot of work and it's hard and it sucks. And so I got over that hump. I kind of got to the point where I was like, this is fine. I can do this. And I kind of embraced it. Part of the problem is that it's a lot more work than what it is rewarding as far as what you're seeing move, like with people and development and everything else initially, and then what you're seeing monetarily as well. And so that's difficult because it's the hardest I've ever worked and the least amount of money I've made. But then in the middle, you start to make a living. You're making okay money, but you kind of it's kind of like when you work out, you get stronger, and then when you're lifting those same weights, you can just do it because you've done it, and so you're used to it. And that's kind of how the middle felt. It's like, okay, we can do this. We've done this. But it's also just like keeping your head down and staying focused and knowing that if you do this longer and longer, the reward will be there in the end. And so, and it was probably, I mean, it was a while in. It was probably 10 or so years in when you finally see that, oh, now we're reaping the rewards. And it's funny because a lot of people in the end of my business that knew me and knew my lifestyle, and they were like, oh man, it's just like all comes so easy for him and everything else. They never knew the first 10 years. So they thought it really did just come so easy. And that's at a point when finally when problems came, I could pay to get them out of the way. When in the beginning, the problem came, I was the guy that had to answer the problem, and they didn't see all of that. So they didn't know that, no, actually, this is a real headache until it became something that was a lot, easier to kind of deal with those issues and potholes and hurdles.
Yeah. So kind of like along the way, I mean, you talked right there about like I finally had some money to be able to do other things with. I think a lot of people, whether it's their first summer, second summer, third, fifth, 10th, they're all, I mean, obviously pest control is the way that they get money to then go invest in whatever it is, what are some different things that you would encourage, like maybe like a guy starting out, a guy in the middle to invest in, and then look towards more towards the end of your tenure on what are some different things that you're like, this would be a great place to put money for a first year. This would be a place to put money for someone that's done it for a while.
So the first thing that I would speak to is, like, as a beginning rep, the biggest investment that they need to make is in themselves. Whatever that is, and not, I mean, there's people that'll sell you whatever you want to buy or believe. When I say invest in yourself, not even necessarily all monetarily, just in time and effort and reading and focus and working to improve. Because in order to really get ahead, you have to increase your income first. And once your income increases to a level that you have excess income, you can take whatever that excess is and invest it. So I think in the beginning, you're making enough to make it by, to pay your bills at school, whatever it is. And so the first investment needs to be maximizing that income. And then from there, once you're making money, I mean, the one thing that I've seen, real estate always works. Like, a lot of things go through, ebbs and flows, and real estate has some of that too. But really, at the end of the day, everyone that I know that's rich is somehow tied into real estate. And there's a couple things on that. Is it's very secure investment, number one. So I think that's great. But also, number two is you can do a lot of investment in real estate on leverage. And you have to have income to substantiate gaining that leverage. But once you do, then you have the opportunity to be making money on money that's not even yours.
Yeah, play Monopoly with the bank stuff.
Yes.
That's cool. No, 100%. Yeah, I think real estate is a great avenue. And, I mean, historically, it's grown 4% a year over the course of American history. Mm-hmm. So to tie yourself to that growth is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, too, is when you're dealing with investment, one of the things that takes away from investments is inflation, and real estate's a great inflation hedge, because as things are going up, your real estate's going up too. Like you mentioned, the 4%, but even in times of higher than that inflation, like we've just recently experienced, at least your investments in real estate aren't losing you money like you may be losing in other areas, because the rate of the currency value is going up so high so quick.
Yeah, no, the dollar's tanky.
Yeah.
One thing that I like you brought up at the very beginning, though, that I think is important just for overall like health and like well-being is like learning and like investing in yourself. Mm-hmm. School's always an interesting topic amongst like summer sales guys, like whether it's important, whether they should. For me, like when I went, I graduated from UVU, but I thought it was cool because it was the only time of the year when I gotta like be not involved in like a super sales culture. I got to be around people that were like a little bit different minded than me and learn how to work with different kinds of people. So I did see a lot of value in it, and I know like people's views on it like change over time and stuff like that. But how important do you think like school is necessary for a guy going out and selling? And then on top of that, I mean, you got your master's degree, right, in psychology?
Family counseling.
Family counseling, which like how like. I mean, obviously, continuing education was important that way, but what value do you think that brings to someone's life? And then also, how did it affect your career in pest control and summer sales?
Mm-hmm. So my kids bring the same thing to me. I'm not going to school, or you don't need college or whatever. And I think school itself. Right now, the major importance of school itself is if you want to chase some kind of a career that requires that diploma, that certificate, something like accounting, where you need a master's in accounting to really do that, or doctor or lawyer, where you can't do it without the degree, But otherwise, I think the problem is that the focus is too much on school and not on education. I think if people focused on what really educated them, I don't care if my kids go to school, as long as they're focused on education and improving and uplifting themselves, And if they're focused on that, I don't think school is the end all be all. In fact, to be honest with you, I think at this point, universities and institutions have gotten away from some of the diversity that you speak about that would actually be beneficial to critical thinking. And so I think you can sometimes get that in other areas and other ways better. But the same way too that personally, I don't love the idea of homeschooling my kids. Well, probably this is all controversial for all you people, but I don't love the idea of homeschooling my kids because of the fact that I think that the education they're getting is important, but I think just as important is the social education that they're getting. And so the same thing is important in going to school, going to college. College is great because you can get some learning there. Be careful of like some of the woke ideas, but at the end of the day, what's just as important at college is the networking that you're doing. I can't tell you how many super successful people got their opportunity because people they met in school. And not just the networking, not just for your financial gain, but also like the social education that you're going to gain, and the opportunities there, the friendships, like lifelong friendships that I made from my mission and from school were, I mean, still, I just went on a vacation with my wife, and we went with my buddy that I met in college and his wife. And so, like, there's just opportunities there for life and for fulfillment and happiness that are going to come in no other way. You'll be forced, just like on your mission, to integrate with people that you wouldn't integrate with otherwise, and you kind of find value in those people, and otherwise you just would avoid or stay away from those situations.
Yes. Well, I mean, school's an artificial system. And like, and I think you have to realize that when you're going, if you are going to go in through like, go through it. But it can direct you sometimes into things that really are going to uplift and balance your life, or it could not. But I think sometimes and it doesn't have to be school, but whatever like artificial systems you're allowing to be around in your life, you have to make sure that they're pushing in and developing your growth. Mm-hmm. And I think from like a full like 360, like not just monetarily, but like all the way around. Because I think in the end, if you grow as a person, your pocketbook too can grow faster. Mm-hmm. So
plus, I think the older that you get, the more that you realize. Like when I was the age of most of the guys that are working in your organization, monetarily, like financially, was the number one priority. That's the number one thing you think of. But the older that you get, all those other things that we talk about because it kind of goes good and you don't want to make it seem like you're only monetarily focused, but all those other things actually do matter more. And so the financial part starts to level out and even degrade how much it really matters in your life.
I love it. So cool. So, I mean, kind of wrapping up, I mean, you ended up selling your business. I'm not going to ask you the number or anything like that, but I was I mean, obviously, like exiting and like heading out in the sunset. Was that a moment you were expecting? Was there things that like you learned in that process, and then was it all worth it?
So, it was actually very unexpected. So I was approached by somebody that I knew from back in Texas that wasn't even in the pest control space. He knew somebody that knew somebody, and one thing led to another. And along the way, you have people that bring up, hey, this or that, would you want to sell? But it seems like it's never really, like, it's kind of like selling your home when it's not on the market. Like, people are like, oh yeah, I'd buy your house, yeah, but it never really goes anywhere, Yeah. And so it was one of those situations, and then this situation actually just continued to develop, and I was like, yeah, I would actually be willing to do that, And so it just developed pretty quickly. From that time, within maybe 8 months, we were done, And so, I mean, it was a surprise, and I wasn't actually seeking to sell. I was quite happy doing what I was doing. I'd finally made it to the point in my business where systems were pretty set up and we had things going very well. I was making a great income, and so at the end of the day, like, I wasn't pushing necessarily to get out, but at the same time too, that always helps you in a negotiation when you're not desperate to get out because you're happy whatever happens. And so, the person that loses the negotiation is the one that has the most to lose,
Yeah.
So not that, oh man, it just worked out so well, it was fine. But so that was a surprise. Secondly, was it worth it? I would do it all over again. The question I always get from people is like, do you regret? Like, do you wish you were still in it? Do you regret it? And there's not like a half a second that I wish I was back in it. So I'm fine. I'm happy. But the problem I'm having now is that I'm looking for that thing that's more meaningful, and it's hard to find because there was a lot of meaningful aspects of my life working with younger guys and helping, being involved with them. And also, like, I have legit friendships from that time too. Like, it wasn't just like business, but it was actually like relationships. I feel like it's kind of like the guys that play pro sports, and then when it's over, they get out of the locker room and they're like, man, I miss the camaraderie. Yeah. And I totally miss that. Like, I was like, getting out of this, I was like 45 years old, still like trying to run around and play ball and like do stuff with the sales guys. And they're like, dude, this guy just needs to go find somewhere else to go. We're just hanging with our boys.
I was talking with my buddy Tyler Averett yesterday, and he was like, dude, I was shocked. He's like, when we went and played basketball with Greg, I was shocked at like how well he was able to get up and down the floor. How like he was like throwing his weight into me. He's like he schooled me. He was like, I was impressed. So,
that's the thing. I always just enjoyed competing, and so whether it was sports or sales or whatever, just had a good time with it. And like, seriously, I still have handfuls of guys that I'm still friends with from the years that we all worked together. And so that's what's hard, is because now, like, I really don't have like friendships that I'm able to be engaging with every single day like I was there. And so that's a difficult thing. You feel like you're a little bit on an island.
Well, and I guess just like kind of wrapping up, what are some like, do you have a couple books that you're like, these ones have changed my perspective lately on a lot of things that I really, really like, or just ones that would be great for an audience like this to listen or read from?
I mean, the last book that I read that I really liked was Steve Young's The Law of Love. He has a new one that I haven't gotten through at all, but that might be a personal reason why I liked it, but it actually ties into this business, and it's the fact that not making everything in your interactions with people transactional, but making it actually based on love. And that was probably a lot for me, because of the fact that everything I ever did, there was always a transaction behind it. If I was dealing with a customer, if I was dealing with an employee, dealing with sales guys, there's always a transaction at hand, and I kind of hated it because I really genuinely liked these people, and I just wanted it to be about that, but I didn't really know how to completely remove that. And so that's what I loved about his book, is like, he talks about how he's in private equity now, and he just totally kind of finds ways to remove that aspect of transaction out of those situations. And it just had some good insight for me in that respect. I really like that, and try and remember and emulate that when I can, but fall back to bad habits, I'm sure, all the time. So
no, well, if you only have a merchant relationship with someone, it's not very warm. It doesn't feel like a campfire. It feels pretty cold. So I think there's a ton to learn there, and there's a ton to make sure that everyone is feeling that and experiencing that when they're working with you. So cool. I love that. Well, Greg, honestly, thanks so much for coming on the pod.
Glad to be here. Yeah. This is fun.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate you, one, getting me into the space, helping me like set. I mean, I wouldn't have started BRD if I had not gone through the Camp Romney. So it was fun to go through.
Honestly, I follow your stuff, and I think it's awesome watching what you're doing. And this is honestly that moment where the transition of the teacher becoming the student. I'm just watching like how you're evolving your business. I think it's really cool. You're doing a great job.
Well, dude, I appreciate that. Love you, brother.
Yeah,
thanks for being
you
on.
too, man. Thank you.
So.